Okay, here is an ebook project. This is the interior. So we've got, you know, a decorative font, a decorative title page, we have a decorative quote, and then we have these part sections, and then we have the chapters and chapter numbers in this little decorative piece. And then we have some letters that I use like a torn background. And so what we have to think about for this one is, first of all, we definitely don't want 33 graphics. So if we kept our page numbers in the in this little piece of tape, is what it's supposed to be like. On top of the tape, we would have 33 graphics. So we have to think about file size. And for Amazon, the reason we have to think about for Amazon is Amazon charges a delivery fee. And it's supposed to be 15 cents per 1 megabyte. And the end product, your EPUB, if it's a certain size, I have yet to figure out how to calculate that amount. You should think, oh, if my file size is 1 megabyte, it should be 15 cents. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It's the file size that Amazon calculates after they run the file through their program, which is usually lower than the 1 megabyte. I try to keep my file sizes to around 500 to 600 kilobytes or smaller, and that usually runs about 6 to 8 cent delivery fee, and that's pretty average. So if we were to include 33 graphics just for the chapters, plus we have the decorative title page, that decorative quote, we're gonna have like a 2 or 3 megabyte file. We don't want that, so we have to design the ebook a little bit differently. And I'm probably not going to include this graphic at all, and I am not going to. There's really not a good way to do this graphic behind text like this, so we're not even going to attempt that. But we will put the letters in like a gray box, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Unfortunately, although InDesign has now added this paragraph styles, I'm thinking paragraph borders and shading, and this does come through in an ebook. But if you have longer blocks of text like this that you want shaded, I prefer to do it manually. So in this ebook, we are going to look at how to do that, okay? So I have already, let me undo what I did there. I don't need to, this is my print file. Okay, so we're going to save this. Now, if you know me, you already know that I finish my print book first, and then come back to my ebook. Okay, so I've already saved out the ebook file, and so we're gonna start working on this. So first off, let's think about the font. So I do have this Vervain font. Vervain is not a Google font, so I want to find a Google font that's similar to Vervain. So we're going to go to the Google fonts. We're going to look at handwriting, and we are going to, I just want to make sure Vervain isn't a Google font. Oh, okay. I didn't think it was. So we're going to cross that out. All right, so we want something similar, and shadows into light could work. I think Vervain is a little bit darker than Shadows into Light. There is a Shadows into Light 2, So let's just kind of look around. What we're looking for is a kind of thick print handwriting. Okay. So we don't want it to be cursive, so any of the cursives are almost out. Petric hand could work, but it's almost clean. We want something a little bit more edgy, I guess you could say. And we want it kind of narrow, so some of these are just kind of too thick. And, you know, we may not be able to find something that's going to work exactly. This could work, but it's too round, but it could work. So if that's all we can find. This one actually might be pretty good, this Nanum pen script. So we're going to keep that one in mind. It's covered by Grace. All right, so let's look at these two. I'm pretty sure I would be happy with any of these. So what we're going to do, we're doing this one, covered by Grace. That's it. So if we look at this and look at this, we're good. We're good. This is going to be perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to download this because I don't think I've ever downloaded this. And what I do is I keep all of my Google Fonts in a fonts folder, and so that way when I move, if you've watched my videos before, and I'll get into this a little bit later to explain it, the only type of fonts that you want to embed in an ebook are fonts that are available through open licensing, such as any of the fonts available on Google Fonts. So all the Google Fonts are either an open license or an Apache license, and that's what you want to use. Because in order for fonts to work on a Kindle device, the EPUB cannot be encrypted. And as of this recording, who knows, with Amazon, they may change it, but this is the way it's always been. So we need to make sure, and since we can encrypt it, Amazon is not going to be able to read those obfuscated, I think is what it's called, fonts that InDesign uses. So what happens when you create an EPUB from InDesign and you tell InDesign to embed the fonts, it creates a font file based on the original font file, but it only puts all of the glyphs that were actually used in the ebook. So if you didn't use like this copyright character for this font, or this yen, whatever that is, the cent, the and, you may not use a Z, okay? It's not going to include those in the font file, all right? So it obfuscates the font. To get it to work for Kindle, we have to replace that obfuscated font with the original font file, okay? And we have to remove the encryption. So I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. That's just kind of the general background. So what I'm going to do is I am going to open this zip file, and we're just going to install this font on my system, okay? And then what we're going to do is wherever this font is in our document, we are going to replace it with our new font, which is Covered by Grace. Okay, very similar to verbatim. So Covered by Your Grace. All right. So wherever we have that, we're gonna work on that. Okay. So now let me go back to our document. Now I am getting ready to set it up for the ebook. This is a signature half title page. It's at the very front of the print book. It's a secondary title page, so we do not need it for the ebook. Okay. So I'm just going to delete that page out. We're going to delete this page out. And we're going to delete all of this in just a minute. I kind of have a hidden table of contents that's now, I mean a hidden title page that's now in there. Now if you use my template, you know that I have these set up as variables. So since I'm going to be deleting these details out, I'm actually just putting that information on the title page. So we don't need it anymore. If I would have deleted this first, we would have lost the variable here. So I just copied and pasted it there. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the PDF for this book. I am going to open up this page, and this page, okay? All right, so here is our title page. And I am just going to position it where it looks more centered. So I'm basing it on the author details here. I'm going to do it just like that, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it as, we want this to be a JPEG, and I only want it to be a 600, let's just make it 900 in height. And the quality is good. This is going to give us a file size of about 45 kilobytes, which is good. So I'm going to export it, and I'm just going to save it in that EPUB folder for this client. And eBook. And I'm just going to create a folder called links, just because that's me. And then we're going to call this title. Okay, so now that we saved the title page, we are actually going to insert it. So if you follow my instructions that come with my template, I'm going to try to do this, but I have a tendency to kind of jump all over the place as I'm doing ebooks. But you can follow this as like a checklist. So the first thing is save a new version of the final print file, which I had already done. I prefer to save it with just the book name only, with nothing additional, because the file names of all the XHTML pages that make up the ebook use that file name and add a number to it. So I like to keep it simple and just call it the book title. Any graphics used on the master page will need to be placed in line. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. I'm going through and creating those pages that have the full graphics. And we're actually not going to have this graphic in the book. We're just going to have the decorative number because we would need to do 33 different graphics because there are 33 chapters, and that's just too much. That's going to add too much to our file size. So we're just going to do the number without the little piece of paper. Now, if we wanted, we could do the piece of paper above it. You know, I just don't think that's going to look all that great. So we're just going to just leave it without, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to delete this page because we are going to add in the image. So the first thing I do is I just use an image tag that's in my template. This image tag, it centers, there's space of before and after, which we don't need, and the lighting is set to auto. So the reason why you know it, even though it says 15 point, is set to auto because it's got the parentheses in it. So we are going to place that graphic that we just created, and I have to find your folder first. And it was under ebook links title. All right, so now quirk of InDesign. This graphic was a lot bigger than my page size, so it's like it feels like everything was deleted. That is not the case. Just do a Control-Z and that graphic comes up in your cursor, and then place it, and then I'm just going to resize it to fit and then I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so this is going to be our title page, but we want our copyright to start on the next page. So part number 3 of our instructions talks about page breaks. So wherever you have a page break in your print book, InDesign isn't going to automatically put a page break there. It will. This is a little bit complex, hard to explain. There are a couple ways to do ebooks. You can create an ebook file where everything is in one long file, meaning you're going to have tens of thousands of lines in one HTML document. Which, if you're trying to find mistakes or review things, it can be a bit cumbersome. InDesign, in that situation, puts page breaks in. So if the device reads a page break, it's going to insert a page break there. So like a chapter title would go to the next page. Now, one of the problems I've found is that not all ebook devices read page breaks. Okay. And because it's so messy to have it in one long XHTML document, I prefer to break it down by chapter. So we have to put page breaks in that are readable for an EPUB. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so what's going to happen is each page where we set a page break, it's going to come in as a new XHTML file. So we're going to have multiple XHTML files. We're going to have over 33 because there's 33 chapters, plus we're going to have the copyright, the title page, and some of the back matter pages. So that's what we're going to do next. So we have to set the style to break. Okay, so it's not like entering a page break for print. It doesn't work that way. For an ebook, we actually have to set an EPUB style. So in my template, I already have some like copyright 1 ebook split. And sometimes it doesn't automatically default, so you need to make sure you check it. So here on the details of the paragraph style, you'll go to the last part, which is export tagging, and you're going to select this right here where it says split document EPUB only. Okay. Now I also like certain things to start lower on the page, like the beginning of a chapter, the copyright page. Pretty much anything that's on a new page that's not the continuing flow of text, I like to start a little bit lower. That's just traditionally how books are done, and I like my EPUBs to be that way as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a 1-inch space above, okay? And this doesn't matter other than to view. I just want to make sure this is on next page, but this doesn't matter for the EPUB. Okay. It will bring in a page break code, but I usually delete those out. This is what's most important, is to split document here. Okay, so we're going to click on it. Okay, so now we know that the title page is going to be on the first page, and then our copyright page will come next. All right, so the next thing is that one graphic that we need to create. So this one right here. And sometimes when you pull things from an ebook, we get these funny, especially an ebook that was created with PDFX1, sometimes we get these lines here, and I'm just going to get rid of this by just using a brush and painting over this part. Oh, it would help if I upped my flow. Okay, since this isn't the best way to do it, because this is, you'll see it's kind of torn, it's got this shading area, so I'm actually not going to do this one that way. And if we look at this one, I don't Yep, there were some on that too. I hate that all of these places need that PDF X1A because this is what happens. But it shouldn't show up in the print book, but it does when you open up from the other thing. So what I'm going to do instead of, and what those lines are is they're just from where you're having layered transparent graphics. So these transparent graphics, you know, they've got some transparency in them. It's just that the PDF X1A doesn't support transparency, and so it flattens everything, and when it flattens everything, it creates that white line around it. It's not supposed to print, but sometimes it does show up in the PDF when we open up the file with a PDF in Photoshop as a PDF to export it as a JPEG. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to create a high quality print, HQ print. This only purpose is that it serves is for the ebook. So we're not going to worry about trying to get rid of all those thin white lines, okay? Alright, so now what we're going to do is let me close some of these other things that I had open. We are going to open up that PDF again, but we're going to open up the high quality print, and we're just going to select those pages again. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to kind of center the author name down at the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing, export as. I'm going to make the height 900, it's good, 44 kilobytes. We're going to save it in that same location. Let's see, ebook, links, title. I'm just going to save it on top of the one that we already saved. So that one is good. And then this one, see, all of those lines are now gone. I'm going to create this on a white background since we've got some shading here, so I'd much rather it look with a white background. Okay, so we can save it as a JPEG, which means hopefully the file size will be smaller. So we're going to export this. I don't want it to be that wide. I think 600 width will be good enough. And since this has text on it, I may try to make it excellent, which gives us a 37.4 kilobyte file. So I think that's good. And I'm just going to say quote. And then this one, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to have a white background. Okay. I'm actually going to crop this. So, crop it. And then we are going to do the same thing. We're going to export as. I only want this to be probably 500 pixels wide. And we will, since it has text on it, I'll make it excellent, and it's 15 kilobytes, so we're good there. I'm just going to call it April. Okay, and I think I'll have more of those time things to make. Since we created a new one, we need to update the link. Okay, just resize it, and then we need to add. We're going to figure out what style we want. Ornament split for ebook is what I'm going to use. We're going to make sure it's split. We are going to add a 1-inch space above. We don't need a first line indent. We don't need a space after. And we want to make sure it is centered, which it is. And we're going to add that quote here. And going to take it, we're just going to leave it this size, and I will probably adjust it in the ebook when I actually get into the code of the ebook. So we're just going to tell it to be on the next page just for the purposes of viewing the InDesign file. Okay, table of contents page we'll get back to. And now we can delete this one out. Okay, and we can just delete these blank pages. Okay, now here's our April, and I am going to, oh, this is a part of the main text frame. So what I'm going to do, next I'm going to go ahead and just select all my pages and apply the C blank page. Okay, this is just one of those things I do. You don't have to do it. I just prefer seeing it a certain way. Okay, all right, so now we need to add the April right here. We're going to make it that ornament split for ebook. We're going to place April. Okay, I'm not going to worry about resizing it. We will do that in the ebook. All right, so here is our chapter titles. We want our ebook to split with them. I'm going to go ahead and change that because it's still the vervain, the covered by your grace. Then we're going to center it. We're going to add a 1-inch space above. We don't need a 2-inch space below, so we're going to just make that 0.5, and I'm going to adjust that in the ebook because I always change spaces to EMs, and they come through as pixels. So, all right, and then let's see. Covered by your grace. I think everything is good. And then we want to set this as a split document. And our keep options should already be on next page. So we're all good there. Okay. Now, one thing we need to do is we need to clear the overrides. And the first, if you religiously set styles and you know the only overrides that you have in here are where you have a where you created an override, you adjusted the tracking for the to balance pages. What you can do is you can do a Control-A and do a clear all. It's been a long time since I've done this print book, so I'm not quite sure if I was religious about text, about setting paragraph styles. So I am just going to do one way of doing it is just find the paragraph style chapter text, which is all of these, and change it to chapter, replace with chapter text. And that's going to get rid of our overrides. So there were 73 of them. And I'm just hoping that I was a good girl and set all the styles. Another thing you want to look for is hard line breaks. So a forced line break, and I'm just going to manually look at these. So I'm going to change this to first para. Okay, I don't know what this is. And first para. I'm taking that out. Just taking that out. Because they're not going to work the same way in an ebook, so it's kind of pointless to create them in. You may create a bigger mess. All right, where's the next one? Okay. All right, so there are no more. So we're good. I'm going to go back towards the beginning and just start scrolling through everything. All right, these were letters. So we're just going to empty these out. So for letters, I am going to create a div tag in my CSS. Now, InDesign has this paragraph shading, paragraph borders and paragraph shading that you can do that will create it, but it's a bit clunky. and so I prefer to do it myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this, and I'm going to make sure there's no character style applied to it, and then I'm going to create a new paragraph style, and I'm going to call it div. So that way I can do a search for it, okay, in my ebook file. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and we are going to put this at the end. We're going to say div end. That way I can search for it 2 different ways. Okay. So we're going to put these in gray boxes, and I'll show you how to do that. But I'm going to show you how to do that in Dreamweaver. Okay. All right. So we've already done this because this is a chapter title. So now my seam break should come through just fine. Here's another letter. If I remember correctly, this book had a ton of letters. She wrote them to her mother, who I believe was deceased, if I remember correctly. I read parts of the book as I was formatting. It's a YA book, and I also write YA, so I love reading YA books. Alright, so we're just scrolling through. I like to make sure some authors put spaces between M dashes. There shouldn't be any spaces, and I usually remove them, but during the ebook phase I like to make sure that they're done properly. And the same with ellipses for ebooks. A lot of people will do the ellipses the Chicago Manual style, which is space, period, space, period, space, period, space. But that space is a non-breaking space, and that doesn't necessarily work well in ebooks, so I prefer to switch it out for a true ellipses and have no space before and then 1 space after. Okay. And I don't remember if I wrote end. I hope I wrote end on this other one. Let me go back and check. So I'm not going to make you watch me. I think the only change that I need to do is take all my letters and put them in div tags, or poems, like that one was a poem. So I'm not going to make you watch me. Now here is a screw up. So let's look at what this is. Approximate page number is 52. So we're going to look around page. Let's start with page 50. All right, so that was the poem. Okay, so this needs to be in a gray box, and it needs to be in a so this was a post-it note that I mimicked in the print book. And I don't know why I have all of these different. I think that might be a Google font, so I'm going to look for that real quick because nope, we're going to set that in the same font. Make it easy. We don't want to have too many, we don't want to include too many fonts. So we're going to change this to Covered by Your Grace. Okay. And I am just going to call this block quote handwriting 1. And it looks like these have character styles applied to them, so I'm going to remove that. Then we are going to block quote handwriting 1. There should be block quote handwriting 1 and block quote handwriting 1. Then we're going to add a div tag here because we're going to put this in a gray box too. And then this is going to be div end. And we can clear the override here. And then we're going to delete this out. And it's a good thing I didn't do a Control A because I didn't have these set to a style. So it's always a good habit to set styles and don't have overrides unless you are trying to get them to balance. Okay, so these are text frames, text messages, and these will come through pretty nicely for the ebook because I used the gray background, and since these are single lines, and each line is contained within the shape, we don't need to worry about adding div tags because they're going to come through as is. It's a little different, but pretty much the same effect. All right, so we're going to just continue to scroll and, okay, I think that's good. Another thing, and this is where we need to add a div tag. And div end. And another one. So this is going to look a little weird, but I think it's okay. And we're going to have end. All right. And this is where we need to delete my backgrounds. I probably could have created a master page with those on it, but I did not. Oops, I think I deleted the wrong one. So, there we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pause this because I don't think you need to watch me do all this. It's basically the same thing. I'm just going through and adding my div tag to those pages that had the letters, and just double checking everything. So I'm going to pause this so you don't have to sit here and watch me. Okay, so I have gone through the entire book and set my div tags. The last thing I need to do is, there's a couple things I need to do actually. Sometimes when I'm inserting this div tag, I may accidentally have a character style applied to this line, and I want to make sure I remove that because that is going to cause issues in the ebook when I do a find and replace. If I have an italic character style on some of them and others I don't, I'm not going to be able to find them all. So the first thing I'm going to do is find any div tags that has any style, and I'm just going to replace it with no character style and the div tag, and so that will take care of any of those rogue italics that I have in there, and I won't have to worry about it. Okay, the last thing we need to do now is just set the table of contents, so I'm going to just update it. All right, so I just need to change my styles. I don't want any page numbers, and we probably want these centered, and I don't need them to be a numbered list. So the first thing we'll do is we will just remove the numbered list and center these. Now they're not going to center until I remove the page number. All right, so to do that, I need to go to Layout, Table of Contents Styles. We're going to edit it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set the table of contents the contents to other titles, which it is, but I'm actually going to change that font to the Covered by Grace. And then we really need, because I use graphics for those months, I'm not going to be able to set those as part titles, so that's fine. And then other titles, we actually don't have any other titles, so we're just going to do the chapter titles. We're going to tell it to be no page number, and that's it. Let's check one thing. Yep. Okay, and then we're going to update it. Okay, and then we're going to come over here and do other titles, and we're just going to change the font for it. And we're going to make it probably 16. Okay, I think that's good. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up all these character styles and paragraph styles, and then we're going to go ahead and export it to an EPUB. So one of the first things I do to clean up is I'm going to delete any empty page frames, text frames. And I just do that by running a script. If you have some blank page frames, you may not realize it, but what happens is it creates kind of an extra white space in the ebook that we don't want. So it's a good habit to get into deleting all of those before you export. And this quick little JavaScript is a great way to do that. You can find it on the web. I have it on the template resources page. If you purchase my template, you'll see a link to it. The next thing we're going to do is we are just going to go to the character styles, and we're going to delete any unused ones. We're going to delete this folder. We're going to delete the no break character style because we do not need it. And then we're going to sort these by name alphabetically. Okay. And then we are, for the print book, this is all great to have the styles in all these folders, but for the ebook, it kind of creates a very difficult to follow cascading style sheet. So I like to remove them from the folders. So we're removing all of these from the folders. And then we're going to delete these folders. We're going to sort by name. And then we're going to do a select all unused, and we're going to delete all the unused ones. All right. So now, oops, I lost one. Okay. Sort by name. Delete style group. Okay. So there we go. All right. So now we are ready to export as an ebook. Yeah, there's some blank pages in here, but they don't have any text frames in them. So they're really not going to cause any issues, but we can delete them out. All right, so now I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to export it. So we are going to save it as the same name, and we are going to select EPUB reflowable. That's the important part, reflowable. I'm going to click on save. I'm going to change it to EPUB 3.0, and I need to open up the cover and optimize it. Okay, so this is the AI file. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's open that again. I think I can crop that down. Yeah, we just crop it down to this. Okay, so that's the front cover. Let me make sure. I might have some orange around here. Just want to look real close. Yep. Still a little bit. Just going to check it up here too. Nope, we're good there. All right, so now I am going to export this. So this is going to be included with the ebook, and we want it to be as small as possible. So I'm just doing it 600, well, roughly 600 by 900. Good quality, it's going to be 55 kilobytes. I'm going to export that into the ebook folder links, and we're going to call it cover. Okay. All right, so now that we have that set, we can go back here where it says cover. We want to select choose image, and we want to find that cover that we just did, but we need to change it to JPEG for the file type, otherwise it's not going to find it. It's just a little quirk. Drives me crazy. It's always been that way though. Then for the navigation TOC, this is very important. You want to select multi-level TOC style, and you want to use that TOC that we already have built in. That was from my template. All right. Split document based on paragraph style exports. We don't need to do anything on the text. For object, we want to change it to relative to text flow. What that's going to do is that's going to bring in the image as a percentage of screen size instead of a pixel. a set pixel amount. So what that's going to do, it's going to be able to resize across the different devices. All right, so that's the only thing you need to worry about on the object. For conversion settings, if you have a lot of graphics, you can play around with these, but we really don't have a ton. So I'm not too worried about updating this. And anyway, I like to manually tweak the size of the graphics if needed after I've already created it. For the HTML and CSS, I typically include a 25 pixel page margin. Now, if I have a graphic that is extended all the way to the edge of the page, I will not put this. We don't have any preserved local overrides, so I'm not even going to check that. And we do want to include embeddable fonts because we want to include that covered by grace. Okay, JavaScript, I've never used that. We do not need that for this book. And then for the metadata, we need to input the book title and the author name. So it's The Fear of Falling Apart. Okay. And then viewing app, if you want to view it when it's done, you can click on that, but we're not going to do that. All right. So now it's going to generate the EPUB, and we're just going to take a quick look at it. So we're going to go to where it was exported. Copy this, copy this. All right, so to crack open an EPUB, what you do is you take that EPUB that InDesign created, copy it, paste it. Here's the new file that it pasted. Then we are going to change the file name to epub.zip because it's just a zip file. And then we're going to extract it. Okay, and here is our EPUB file. It contains 3 things: meta INF folder, OEBPS folder, and a MIME-type folder. For the meta INF folder, the only thing we need to worry about is if you embedded fonts, we need to delete out the encryption. And we never need to worry about the MIME type. And then the OEBPS folder is every single file of the ebook. So we have a CSS folder, a font folder, and an image folder. If you did not embed fonts, you are not going to have a font folder. So let's take a look at this. I like to take a look at this page by page. Let me close all this stuff down. I don't think I need to save that. All right, so we're going to open up Dreamweaver. And then we're going to drag and drop. So what I'm doing right now, if you follow the instructions, I like to just take a quick peek at all the files before I do any work to it, just to make sure everything has its own page and I have page breaks in all the right spots. Okay, so that's what I'm doing now. Here is the title page. Okay, here is the copyright page, and contents and this little graphic of this quote are together, and I do not want that, so we need to go into our one page, and what I need to do is contents is set to other titles. So what that means is I just need to go into other titles, and I need to tell it to split document for the EPUB only. Also want to make sure there's an inch space above. All right, so now when we export it again and open it back up, it will have that, but I'm going to just continue to look to see if we may need to make any other changes. So we made that correction. Here's April 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so I am going to open up the next batch. Usually do them in increments of 10. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, May, 13, 14, June, 15. Okay, those are all good. And we'll open up the next set, and then we'll have one more set to review. All right, so 30 is 25, oh, nope, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and we already saw 25. And we are going to open up the last bunch. $26. $27, $28, $29, $30, here's $30, $31, $30, $32, and $33. All right, so we're just need to create another one. So we're gonna, what we're gonna do is we're actually going to delete. We're going to delete this EPUB folder that we created and the EPUB zip, because we're going to have to redo it because of that one little tweak. So we're going to export. The beauty of export is once you've already entered all this information in, you don't need to worry about it again. So we're just going to click on OK, and then our file should be created. And I think we're done with the InDesign file, so we can close that. And now we can do it again. Copy the EPUB file, paste it. We change the file name to epub.zip, and then we are going to extract it. And here is it again. So we need to delete out the encryption file. And then we are going to, we'll come back to the CSS. I want to go ahead and get the font situated. So because if you remember correctly, the fonts are obfuscated. I know I'm saying that wrong. I need to look it up just how exactly how to say it, and I'll probably forget. So we need the Covered by Grace font is the only one we need. So in here, you'll see that we have a ton of different ones. The only one we need in here is this Covered by Grace. And we need it to not say regular. Okay. So we are going to, I'm going to delete all those other ones because we don't need to embed those. Okay. All right. So that's all we need. And image file. I just like to double check, make sure they're all low and they all look like a pretty good size. So we don't need to worry about that. There's no extra images, so we're all good. And then we are going to take a look at the CSS. So the CSS is the first thing I create. So we need to remove all of the fonts. In the CSS, this font face is listed first, and that's all the fonts that it embedded. So we want to delete out all of those. Okay. All right, now we're going to clean this up. We don't need this particular font right here. Since I deleted it out, it'll just say use a serif font. So we're going to replace all of this in the current document. And we're not going to use this Alaron Light. We're just going to say sans serif, so I'm just going to replace all that. Now I do a lot of cleanup in the CSS. We're going to need to look for this emoji. Let's see how that came through. Usually with emojis, if I use an emoji font, I will try to turn it into a graphic. Let's see, there's a couple of paragraph overrides that I'm going to just delete out. And then we're just going to start cleaning some of this up because InDesign puts a lot of unnecessary things in here. We don't need to tell it the color is black because that's kind of the default. So we're going to remove that line from the whole entire thing. We don't need all for it to tell it normal, because normal is the default. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that line, do a Control C, then a Shift Control F, which brings up the Find and Replace menu. And what we want to do is we want to tell it, first of all, make sure your regular expressions are on. And we are going to tell it everything that is normal, we want to delete that whole line. But since it says font style, font variant, font weight, we have to put in something that will automatically find all of those. So we could search for each one individually, but you're talking about many different ones. So we're just going to do an open paren, period, asterisk, question mark, close paren. And that will find a text string before the colon, normal, semicolon. And we want to replace it with nothing. Okay. So in the same likeness, there are some that are labeled none. So we want to do the same thing and remove all the nones. Okay. Next thing, we don't need orphans. So we're just going to remove that line. We don't need widows. So we're going to remove that line. You remember how I said InDesign puts these page breaks? Well, here they are. I do not like using this method to build my ebook, so I prefer to delete these out. Sometimes these can cause blank pages, which seems like an error in your ebook, so I like to delete them out. And I use the same thing. I look for page dash break dash and then put my character string in there to find any particular character string after the dash and before a semicolon. So you'll see all these page breaks are after, before, so they're all vary. So I'm going to remove all those. Okay. Now the next thing I do is I look at I look at pixels and I change them to EMs. So for margin bottom, we're just going to change that to 1 EM. We're going to change it throughout the whole document. And then a margin left, we're going to change that to 1 EM. And margin right is 1 EM. And then margin top. So I just like to go through and clean up all those pixels because EMs work better for Kindles. And the big one is text indents. You definitely want to change that from whatever it is to 1 EM. Okay. All right, so going to quickly look through and just identify anything that may need to be changed. This margin top that's set to be 72 pixels, I like to change that to 10%. Some of these changes are not necessary. It's just how I prefer things. I forgot to replace one of the verbains, so we are going to find where it says verbain and change it to covered by grace. Okay. And anything that has a low line space under 1, I like to change that to 1. Here's a bottom of 36 pixels. We're going to change that to 2 EM. Margin top of 5 pixels, I'm going to change to 1 EM. And so I think the only other thing we need to worry about is building in our div tags. So remember we created a div, so we are going to add a div tag and we are going to call it box. Okay. And we are going to add padding of 20. Let's do 0.5 EM. We may change this all the way around, and then we are going to background color. we are going to make it like a gray, not a dark gray, but a light gray. Let's see, light gray. Actually, we're going to use one of the same colors as the, we're going to use this color right here. Alright, and background color, we're going to do a margin top of 1 EM, margin bottom of 1 EM, margin margin left of 1 EM, and a margin right of 1 EM. So that will offset those some. I might come back and tweak this, we'll see. I think that's good. We may, the font size for these texts is pretty small, but I don't want it to quite be 1 EM because it's set to a sans serif, and sans serif typically looks bigger. So we're going to try a 0.9 EM. And then we are probably going to need to tweak the spacing here. And we'll do that as we come across those. Okay, we don't need this one. I'm going to delete that out. Okay, so now that we've got our CSS somewhat cleaned up, we are going to just start going through each page. So I'm going to drag this over here so you can see it. So the content OPF page, this is kind of the directory of the ebook. The only thing we need to worry about are the fonts. We added, we took away all of the fonts except the Covered by Grace. So I'm just going to delete all those out. Now if it's a true type font, make sure, sometimes the media type will say true type. We need it to say this open type because technically true type fonts aren't EPUB 3.0, but they still work as long as you change the media type. So that's just a little thing that I discovered. So just make sure your fonts are correct. So if everything that is in your ebook should be in this manifest. If it's not, you're going to have a validation error. Okay, so the next thing is we don't need to worry about the cover. We're just going to start looking at the individual pages. For the title page, the only thing we need to do, since this is an image, we need to add the title in the alt tag. The Fear of Falling Apart by Lauren. The reason why we put something in the alt tag is to make it where if somebody is having their device read to them, the device will read what is in the alt tag. Okay. Right here is our copyright page, so we don't need to worry about that. And for the alt tag here, we need to actually type this quote in the alt tag, so the device will read it. And for the contents page, I'd like to delete out all these text anchors. Now, I wouldn't recommend deleting text anchors out if your book is a nonfiction and you may have like a lot of headings that are in the table of contents. I just delete them out because it's cleaner and the table of contents works the way I want it to. It goes to the right position. All right, so okay, so table of contents is good. This we need to say April, and we don't want it to come through this big, so this is like 100% of screen. So this is image attribute 2. So we're actually going to make this probably, let's do 50% of the screen and see how it looks like. Okay, that might work. Let's make sure our title page wasn't. All right, so let's change this to. This is image attribute 1. It's 88%. We only really need to make it probably 70%. Okay. And now we are on to the text. It put in overrides. I'm just gonna remove all these, but we want to remove them throughout the whole document, so I did not do that. And all right, so our div tags. Well, let's take a look at the seam breaks. We actually need the seam break to say seam break in the alt tag. So we are going to put seam break in our alt tag, but we're going to look the entire folder of this ebook, so we can change it throughout and not just this one page. So to do that, we just select folder and then find the folder that all the links are in. We're in the OEBPS folder. Okay, so here you would select folder and then select the folder here. Then we're going to do a replace all for all the seam breaks. Okay, so now they'll have the alt tag. Now we also want to make them smaller. So that means we need to make attribute 3. I think we can get away with 12%. Yep, I think that'll work. Remember, it's going to look different on an actual device, so it's always good to test them on a device as well. All right, so here is where we want to insert our div tags. So what we're going to do is we're going to find this. Anywhere where that is, we are going to say div class equals box. And I think I just used lowercase box. I don't know what I did actually, so let's just double check. Yep, box. All right, so we are going to search for that div tag all across, and we're going to replace it with this. And I think we need this in quotes. Sorry. So box in quotes, and we're going to replace all. Okay, it's going to look a little funny first. We're going to go back to that page. So here is our box, and then we need to find the end tag. So we're going to select that, copy that, and we're going to replace that with an end div tag, so it will end that gray box. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the first page that we were doing. And so here is our letter in the gray box. And save that, close it. And then now what I do is I just go through and look at every page, make sure everything turned out fine. Here's another. We're going to search for this italic character override and just replace it with italic. I hate overrides. Even though we told it not to bring in any overrides, there's some little quirk that InDesign is doing that puts that override in. I've got to figure it out. It drives me crazy. Here's number 2, so we're good there. Let's see, number 3 looks all good. Number 4 looks good. Number 5. I think we can actually put in a bit more padding on these gray boxes. So let's put 1 EM as our padding, and so that's going to add a little bit extra to it. Okay. All right. All right, for the texts, we need to add padding in. So let's go to our text. And we need to add padding. We're going to add 1 EM padding to all of them. And you'll see how that just made them a little bit wider. Okay. So there we go. 6. All right, so now I'm just going to pause this while I look through everything, and if everything checks out, I'll be good to go and I can package this. But if anything comes up, I will start recording again and show you any issues that you may come across. Okay, so on these pages, just remember if you have graphics that have words in them, you always want to include what the words are in the alt tag of that graphic. So I need to make sure all my alt tags have that month, where we have these month graphics. Okay, I have gone through and done everything that I mentioned. The last thing I want to do is I just want to remove these paragraph destinations out of the TOCs. Again, this is just a personal thing of mine. I like when a person clicks on a link that it takes them to the top of the page. If we have these destinations in here, it's the same as their as the anchors that we deleted. So I prefer it a certain way. So I am just going to replace these in this current document, which is the TOC NCX, and then also the TOC NC XHTML. And you won't have the XHTML file if you did an EPUB 2.0. Okay. So now that it's all done, we need to repackage it. So to repackage it, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the MIME type file, send to compressed zip folder, drag the meta INF folder down, drag the OEBPS folder down, and then we're going to change the name to the book title, EPUB 01.EPUB. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we are going to maybe later, we are going to validate it. So I have my Pagina EPUB checker here. And we're just going to drag and drop. All right, so I'm having problems with my div tag. So all these errors are the same. So we are going to take a look at those. All right, so to understand, this may look intimidating, but it's really not. This is telling us that there is an error on the Fear of Falling HTML page 5, line 56. So all you have to do is go into Dreamweaver, and we are going to open up page 5. So we got to go to the right folder first. And since these are all the same error, it shouldn't be that difficult to correct. And this just happens to be, I obviously did something wrong with my boxes. All right, so it's a div tag error on line 56. All right, so line 56 is right here. Okay. So, all right. So sometimes trying to figure out why there's errors can be a pain in the butt. Okay, so I finally figured out what the issue was. It was just I had a div tag and a P tag on the same line, and it didn't seem to like that, so I just added a line break in those areas, and that cleared up the issue. So sometimes finding mistakes in EPUBs can be a pain in the butt. And you are going to introduce mistakes if you do a lot of tweaks to the actual the actual code of the EPUB. So the less that you need to do to it, the better. I have many years of experience of finding errors in EPUB, so it doesn't intimidate me, but if you're just now getting started with it, it may give you some fits if you wind up having an EPUB with a lot of errors. But if you do and you can't figure it out, feel free to message me, and I'll walk you through it. So that's it. I've gotten this this particular ebook to validate, and all is good.